Welcome all of you for the panel discussion, filmmaker Q&A for the International Narrative Competition Program 1. Really appreciate all of you joining in from different parts of the world. Bat-Sheva Guez, then David James Holloway, Erik Gernand.
It's really amazing to have all of you together in one screen at this moment. I think this is the first time we are doing something like this for Kashish 2020 virtual, and we are really excited to have you all here.
Just tell us a little bit briefly about where you're based and what is the name of your film.
So I'm based in New York. My film is called In This Life. It's a short dance experimental film about grief.
Thank you. And David?
I'm based in London, well, South London, and my film is called Plunge, and yeah, it's about a love story, but kind of unconventional one.
And Erik?
Yeah, hi, my name's Erik. I'm in Chicago, and my film is called Sundown.
All right, thank you so much, David, Bat-Sheva, and Erik for joining us. Coming to your film, Bat-Sheva, again, In This Life, the way you have dealt with grief, which is such a difficult emotion in itself, you have, it's something, grief is something internal, and you have managed to put it out there using a technique which is more like a dance choreography. So could you begin by telling us the process behind the film?
Yeah, so I wrote this film alongside ballet dancer Robbie Fairchild, who's known for, he used to be at the New York City Ballet, and he was a star in American in Paris on Broadway and in the movie Cats, actually. So I know him, we worked together on a couple of projects in the past, and I came to him and I said, I'd love to make a dance film with you. We could write it together. He said, I really want to do something about grief. And as soon as he said that, I felt something inside, and I was like, yes, that's exactly. And one of the things that's interesting about grief is it's a very physical experience, and our language is very limited. Like dialogue and words are very limited when it comes to conveying the emotion of grief or comforting someone who's going through grief. Like, it's such a visceral physical experience. And so we figure what's the best way to illustrate that is through dance. So we raised some money together, and Robbie brought in some really famous choreographers. And then together we sculpted this depiction of grief using the 5 stages of grief. So the first act is denial, when he's in the apartment. And then we have anger in the church, and we have bargaining in the ocean, depression when he's in the restaurant and in the bathroom, and then acceptance at the end when he's peeling back layers of fabric.
Can you tell me, are these actors you chose who were dancers, or is it like they were performers and then they underwent a certain training to act for the camera? How did that come out?
So most of these people are dancers. A lot of them are dancers that Robbie knows from classes that he's taught or performances that he's come into contact with. A lot of them are in Broadway shows, which is so kind of heartbreaking now because there is no more Broadway in New York. But yeah, a lot of them they're primarily dancers first, and then we would work with them to bring the acting, the performances out, essentially, except for the man he's on a date with. And that man, as I suspect, I don't think he's a dancer at all, unless I don't know. But as far as I know, he's just an actor. And one of the things we wanted to explore in the film too is sort of the grief that comes when you shed your old skin. So for a lot of times, if someone is coming out of the closet, for example, there's a feeling of relief, but there's often, for some people, a feeling of loss, of this idea of who you were before, or this idea of the future you wanted for yourself. There's sort of like a letting go of old skin, and letting go, a shedding of your old self in order to be your fully realized self. And in order to get to the point of acceptance and self-love, there's a little bit of grieving that has to come through that. And that's part of what we're exploring with this film, that you can see with, for example, the peeling of layers of fabric at the end. So each, the dance that he's doing in that piece is Robbie choreographed that one, the last film. And well, we kind of worked on that one together, and the steps and the movements are each pulled from the different acts. So he's sort of making an amalgam of all the different acts. And then the present Robbie is peeling back the layers of fabric as if he's peeling back the layers of his old self in order to accept who he is now. And it's you know, bittersweet. He's not acceptance with full smiles and happiness. It's sort of an understanding of self, essentially, and all that comes with it, and loving oneself in every form.
Right. In fact, one of the scenes where, you know, there was, I don't know, the makeup or something where, you know, the peeling off, which is it's so visceral. You could actually feel especially in the dating scene, suddenly he's trying to, you know, put his hand, there's something falls on the hand and he tries to, you know, shove it away. And then the scene, especially in the right after that, we have the bathroom scene where, you know, his self comes out, and which is beautifully choreographed. And, you know, tell me how long did you take to shoot choreograph these scenes?
Putting on the mask, like the mud on his face. So it's sort of what we were going for with that is the idea of, like, first the hands come in and try to mold his face. Like, this is how you should be. This is what a man looks like, you know, strong jaw, laser eyes. And then he tries to change his own face and tries to put on this mask on himself, but it's not who he is, and it just sort of drips off of him and it leaks out. So when he's on a date and he's trying to be present in the world, but like that part of himself, like that grief, just sort of leaks out, essentially. And we find with that one, it you know, that everyone's had that experience where you're out in the world, like trying to be social, and you're just so sad, and all you want to do is curl up in a ball, and like that, the loss, the grief is just kind of, you can't control it, essentially. And then that one, the dance in the bathroom, is depression. So it's really interesting. A lot of the choreographers were like, I don't want to do depression because that's so hard. But for me, the idea of depression is sort of a weight holding you down, making easy tasks more challenging. So what we did was create sort of like a shadow monster that comes out from inside of him and holds him down and whispers in his ear, you deserve this. And he wrestles with her in the bathroom. And it's essentially the feeling of weight, of heaviness, of darkness that makes mundane tasks like having a conversation with someone near impossible. And that one was, Christopher Wheeldon was the choreographer for that, and he was wonderful to work with. Like I could come to him with what the ideas were, and he could kind of shape it and mold it, and it was a very collaborative process. And really, it's very strange for a film that's so sad and about loss. We had an incredible time making it. We shot it over 5 days, each day in a different location. We shot the mask, the mud and the face in the same day as the last film, pulling back the fabric. And which is sort of impressive considering the challenges of each location, and of each film had its own thing to overcome, essentially. And we were able to do each one in a different day.
You had a choreographer to choreograph these scenes, and then you had your DOP as well. So what sort of a collaboration that was? Because suppose a person is performing the dance form, and then you have to shoot it as well, which just adds to the whole, you know, challenge.
Yeah.
So getting it on, getting the exact right, you know, performance for the camera. So how did that work out for you?
Yeah, so it was a really fun experience. It's really interesting because I tend to see myself as an auteur director, so I control everything and I do all the writing myself, and it's my world. And this particular process, because I wrote it with a partner and we were choreographing it with choreographers, it was much more collaborative, and it was challenging but really fun because each person could add so many layers to the storytelling. But what we ultimately did is, as we were choreographing each piece, I brought my camera and shot it, and then went home and edited the rehearsal footage. So every single, like, the film was essentially shot before we even shot it. Like, I knew what the angles were going to be. I knew where we were going to where we were going to cut even. And of course, when you're on set, you're exploring and you can find new things, and new shots emerge as we were, and new angles emerge as we were in the locations. And of course, the edit looked dramatically different than what the rehearsal, but I went into it already like very prepared, knowing exactly what I wanted, which was great because in a lot of these locations, we didn't have a lot of time. So we could get to set and I could be like, bam, 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 this is what we need. This shot, that shot. Oh, look, that one's cool. Add this one into the mix. And that was the most exciting when we shot in the church, because 2 of the performers were actually Broadway. They were on a show in Broadway that night and they had to leave very early. So, we had such a short amount of time to shoot something as complicated with so many dancers in such a complicated location with lights outside and fog inside and all this stuff. And we did it. We made the day, which, you know, in filmmaking is always really exciting. And sometimes with these like low budget indie films, you can push it and you can shoot into the night and you can have these really long days. And in this case, I think we had 10 hours and that was it. And then we lost our dancers. And we did it, and we made the day, and we shot, you know, we got all the coverage we needed, and we got all the shots, and it came out great, and it was a real win. So, and I attribute that to a lot of the preparation that we did in advance beforehand.
Right. And so where did you shoot this? It's all in New York, all the locations and everything? Or?
Some was in New York. So the apartment was in New Jersey and Robbie's sister's place. So she graciously let us take over. Yeah, beautiful view in New Jersey, looking into Manhattan. And then the church was through much sweat and tears of just finding, you know, pictures of churches and sending my intern and myself running around New York, and that was in Brooklyn. The ocean, actually, that was the idea. The choreographer, Andrea Miller from Galeem Dance, her parents have a house on the beach, and she was like, I've always wanted to do a piece in the ocean. We were like, oh my God, that's perfect. We couldn't figure out where are we going to shoot this scene, and it just made perfect sense, because with bargaining, it's almost like you're fighting with water, essentially, and which is, you know, you're never going to win if you have a fight, if you wrestle with water, and that was the idea. And then the Black Box Theater, we had a contact that let us have a deal and shoot there. And the bathroom, between me and 2 interns and a producer, we went to maybe 60 bathrooms all across New York City and Brooklyn until we found one that I felt was appropriate for that scene. I wanted one that was dark enough that the shadow monster could disappear into the wall, and large enough to dance in, and then one brass fixtures. And we went all over town until we finally found one that we could afford. And now I have all these pictures of bathrooms that I don't know what to do with.
David, for Plunge, well, I mean, in the film, you do take a deep dive into acceptance, you know, to one's own self. And you have mentioned that, you know, the film is also based on a real story. So can you please tell us about the process of behind how you came to this, zeroed in on this particular idea?
So yeah, when we kind of came to, so the whole idea of Plunge is kind of that there's a gay couple and they're kind of celebrating something and you're not 100% sure what it is. And then you think, oh, it might be a birthday or an anniversary or something wonderful like that. And they seem like a very nice couple. And then, you know, spoilers, one of them basically turns around and says, I would like to become a woman. And the reason we kind of made this film was because it actually happened, as you just mentioned, it's a true story. And so I co-directed it with an actor called Sam Lawrence, who's phenomenal. And he said that he knew someone this had happened to him, and that they had a, you know, they'd been together for a while, happily gay relationship, everyone, you know, like, and then just one of them turned around to the other and said, you know, I would like to transition into a woman. And then when I heard this, I was like, oh, it's such an interesting story, because you just don't really, like, what would you do in that situation? It's such a strange, well, it's not strange, but, you know, like if you're in a relationship with someone and you think you know them, and then for them to just turn around after such a long time and kind of drop this bombshell. And then also there's the aspect of, you know, if a gay man wants to be a woman, do you stay with them and all that kind of that. And that's kind of, I thought, kind of it's not the problem with the film, but kind of where we wanted to get to. But yeah, so we decided to make it, and it was really, really cool. And both the actors in it are our good friends, and we shot it very late at night and it was really cold. And in the film, one of the actors, Sam, is naked for the majority of it. So that was quite a big push to try and get him to do it. So yeah, it just, we wanted to make something, and we really liked the story. We really liked the fact that it was something which was real as well, and it could happen to people. And I was really annoying as a director because I basically said, well, wouldn't it be fun if we planned it all out, and then we thought, oh, wouldn't it be really fun if we just did it in one take? That would be easy. Yeah, that, you know, that won't be hard at all. And it was really hard. But in the end, we got this amazing shot, and I think it took us about 12 times to get it right. But it is all just one take, and yeah, it was good.
Right. I mean, it's such a beautiful one take, and you know, the emotions do come across so well. But I mean, that's you actually. That would have been one of my questions as to how difficult was it to get that emotion out of them, and it was one take, as you mentioned.
We did. So we got them. So we only shot it in one night because we thought, well, it's going to be so draining. Let's just try and keep going as well as we can. And so we had to wait for nightfall to happen, and we shot on top of this rooftop in London, and we realized we only actually had, because we shot at a really stupid time of the year, so we only really had about 5 hours of darkness. So we were like, oh my God, okay, we'll just keep going. We'll just do it. So during the light time hours, I rehearsed with them, and Sam helped to rehearse with them, and we got all the movements down. But because we only had a short amount of time to do it, when you tend to kind of do, okay, we'll do one take. And then, you know, my head would pop up because I didn't realize I was in the right place. So I was like, oh, well, cut that one. All right, go again. But resetting it, you get all these little problems which come along with the whole kind of way. But yeah, it's a really hard process, and I didn't think it was going to be so hard. But it worked out really well. And in the end, we got about 3 nice takes from it. And the actors, weirdly, the more they did it, the more emotional it got, because obviously you're resetting the scene. But Sam, who's naked, he's really cold. And then Henry is kind of having to come to terms with what's happening with his character as well. And so by the time we got to the end, it was quite an emotional experience. It was really nice.
You said that you are also an animation filmmaker, right? You're into 2D animation. And so was it a conscious choice to make Plunge into a live action film? Why was that?
Yeah, so I kind of fell into animation a couple of years back, and I've done some animated short films and done commercial work and bits and bobs. And I'm actually working on a really big project now. It's taken like almost 4 years, and we're almost there on it. And it's going to be really good, and you know, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be wonderful. And so while that was happening, I knew from the kind of looking at it how long it was going to take. And so I had worked with my co-director Sam on some other films, and he acted in one of them, and he'd helped out on another, but we'd never actually met up and hung out, because we were always like, yeah, you know, we've got plenty of time, and you never make the time unless you've actually got nothing going on. So I was like, oh, well, I've got this animation and it's taking forever, so why don't I just do something else? And so I said, oh, well, I haven't met up with Sam yet, so I'll go do that. And then he said that he had his own crew, and they'd been doing a lot of commercial work, but they wanted to move into narrative. So I was like, oh, great, I haven't done live action for a while. Why don't we do something together? And then that's pretty much where it came from. I'm still doing the other animated project, and then we managed to fit in Plunge. Last year, we did it, like, I think it took about four months from script to shoot. We did it because we gave ourselves 6 months to say, you know, because I always feel if you don't give yourself a deadline, projects can go on forever. And so we did that, and then we were like, okay, great. And at this day, this is when we're going to send it to festivals and all that kind of thing. So I think primarily the reason I did this is because I had some free time, and I didn't want to invest in more animation projects because that's adding more work on top of what I already had. So it was very separate from those.
Right. Correct me if I'm wrong. See, when you're into animation, it's basically first you have to, the editing process happens before, and then you get to see this thing on the screen. But here you shoot first, and in live action you shoot first, and then you move on to the editing table, right? So how was working for these two diverse things work out for you? How was your experience on that?
This is the thing. I think that because like you say, with animation, you have to basically almost edit to begin with. So you storyboard and then you make an animatic and you make it so because if you give it to an animator and you say, okay, great, spend 6 months animating this 30-second clip, and then you're like, nah, it's all wrong, then you're wasting everyone's time. So you have to get everything ready. So when you move over to live action, I kind of said, well, we're still going to storyboard it. We're still going to, this is where I would like it to go. However, when we actually got to the set, the hardest thing of probably this entire production was trying to find a rooftop we could shoot on in London, because London is so expensive. And we were just like, oh, well, and I thought, when we started, I was like, I will find somewhere. The rooftops are everywhere. It's absolutely fine. And it didn't happen. It took us a long time. So we were kind of up to almost the shoot date before we found one. And then when we did, it's all about, because in the film, we had to use a crane, which kind of moves between the action and then kind of around them and all this kind of stuff. You have to make sure that where you are, you can swing that crane round. So we had to, even though we had storyboards, you still had to kind of change it a little bit. But I did bring a lot of that kind of animation feel to it, because I just wanted to make sure when I got to set, people knew exactly what we were trying to do. So yeah, I think it's good being an animator and doing that.
Yeah, we'll get back to you. And now I'm moving on. I'll move on to Erik.
Cool.
Thank you so much for waiting.
Oh yeah, of course.
How does it feel to come back to Kashish and show your film to the festival once again, although virtually?
Yeah, I'm super excited to be at this festival for a second time. It's always great to continue with the festival, so I've been very honored anytime that you get to repeat, and I'm very grateful for that.
Now coming to your film, which is such a beautiful portraiture of old age, and and it's such a heartfelt film. You have chosen the technique. I'll come to the story in a bit, but the technique that you used, you started with monochrome, and then it becomes color in a very, very important, turn in the film. How did you zero in on the fact that you are going to use this particular technique in your film?
I structured the entire film around the kiss. So from the beginning, I knew that this kiss that happened back in the 1950s was something that the whole film was centered around, and this character trying to both remember it and come to terms with it was the crux of the entire narrative. So I didn't exactly know at first it would be black and white versus color, but then the more I went, it just felt like that was the right choice to make. And so I worked with my director of photography, and we talked about what lenses and filters to use and how to make all of that work. And I felt very pleased at the end that we had made that choice.
Tell me, are the actors you chose for your film, are they from are they from plays? Do they act in plays?
They are a mix of, they're all Chicago based, because we shot here in Chicago last summer. So it was this time of year. It was actually late June, where we, of course, were, as opposed to David's film, we were all daytime shooting. So we, luckily in June here in Chicago, we had 14 hours of daylight. So we had a nice, really long day that we could work, which was handy. And the casting was, I didn't know any of them. I had seen Sammy, who plays, or the actress who plays Sammy, I'd seen her in a play here in Chicago at one of our great theaters, and I thought she was amazing. And so I wrote the part with her in mind. And then David, the older man, I found through casting, and also Max, we found through casting as well. But I felt very pleased. But they do a mix of both theater and TV film.
Like, how did you come up with the story? Do you have had experiences in real life where you met people who have this kind of similar situation, who are also struggling with similar issues?
I knew of the condition of sundowning from my grandfather, who died in his 90s about 5 or 6 years ago. And my grandmother would say that sometimes as he would approach sunset, he would sometimes drift off to this other place and these other people, and he would walk around the house, and in his mind he was perhaps a child again or a young adult, and it wouldn't happen during the day. He would be pretty much okay, but then it was part of his dementia that he would sundown. And I had before she told me that, I'd never even heard of that word. So I looked it up, I researched it, and I based the experience of David, the older man, on on my grandfather. The rest of it is fiction, but the actual issue of dementia and cognitive decline was based on my real observations with family members. And then I was interested in making it, you don't see a lot of LGBT stories that highlight senior adults. And so that's when I decided to merge those two worlds together. What if he has this, this secret, this thing he's never been able to fully express, and because of the sundowning, that gives him a chance to finally do it.
I just want to ask each of you, where till now, where have your film traveled? What has been the response in terms of film festivals?
I think we've completed the circuit of our first year of film festivals. So this is nearing the end of our tour, but we screened it at the Brooklyn Film Festival. We won Best Experimental Film there. And then we went on to the to Lincoln Center, to the Dance on Camera Festival. And we got to screen before Lincoln Center was closed. We got to screen in a giant movie theater, which is really exciting. And a bunch of festivals. I think the Art of Brooklyn Film Festival. We also took it to Santa Monica College and screened it there for 400 students and had a discussion afterwards, which was really exciting.
It had its world premiere in Madrid at Les Gay Cinemad in November of last year. And that was the first and only festival I got to go to. So this is I think it's 12th festival, but some of them were happening in the winter, and I was waiting. It played in Istanbul and a few other places, and I was going to start going this summer to festivals, but of course everything happened. So hopefully we'll be attending some more, but I really enjoyed being in Madrid, had a good response from the audience, and hopefully we'll be able to get the film out a little more.
Yeah, so we started sending the film from, I forgot, it must have been about September last year, I think. We kind of came into it late, which was a bit of a shame, but we were like, oh yeah, 2020 will be the year, and it's been wonderful. I think Kashish is maybe the 15th we've been selected for, which is quite cool. We screened in Australia and a couple places in America, and then the last place I could physically go to, and it was such a lovely time, I went to a film festival in Amsterdam. We spent a weekend there, and that was really lovely. And pretty much like we came back about 4 days later, it was lockdown. It's done well. I'm quite happy with it, to be honest. So, yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. I'm going to now request Sridhar to join us back.
Thank you. So it's been lovely chatting with you both. My main question basically was like, what is the possibilities of distribution for your films? Like, I mean, for a short film, where do you finally plan to release it, or what is the story on that? No?
With this one, probably just strictly online. Once we've been through the festival year, we'll probably just release it publicly to share online. With previous ones, I've distributed through Frameline and Strand, and back when I think more films were being purchased for DVD collections and other things. But I think that we have such a great online audience that we'll go online probably in the next 6 months.
David?
Yeah, I was pretty much the same for us. I think we're gonna pop it online. I like to give it a good year and a half at festivals, and then things are stretched out a little bit this time. And previously with other short films, it's usually who I meet at festivals. There are some people who are like, oh, I want to put it on TV in this place, or just sign these contracts. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But I like to try and do a new project every year, so I don't really like hold on to stuff as being, oh, that's going to be the one which is going to get me somewhere. It's not just because everything I do, it gets better and better and better. So all aiming towards a feature film at one point, but we'll see how that goes.
Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thank you so much. It was
Good
so
to meet you all.
talking to you. Thank you.
Yeah, it was great meeting you. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day, yeah? Oh, and stay safe. Stay safe.
You too.
Cool.
You too.